Hello everyone and welcome to this video, which is in our Reengineering the Chess Classic series. I'm Grandmaster Matthew Sadler and we're taking a little break from the Lila against Torch games in order to have a look at my latest obsession with classic players, and that's the German master Richard Teichmann. Teichmann was born in, I think it was 1864, and is one of those strange players who had an excellent reputation with his peers. Capablanca called him one of the finest players in the world, albeit whilst demonstrating a game in which he defeated Teichmann in a fine ending, but all the same. And well, I first knew about Teichmann from a lovely portrait of him in Edward Lasker's wonderful Chess Secrets I Learned from the Masters. And Edward Lasker described him as a huge hulk of a man who was wearing an eye patch. He had a lot of eye problems during his life. They called him Richard V because he'd scored so many fifth places. But he was really an exceptionally fine player. Just like Schlechter, actually, a very good all-round player. Openings for the time were pretty good, actually. And he could play attacks, he could defend, and he could also play, as we're going to see, very good endgames against, even the strongest players. And the game we're going to have a look at is between Alexander Alekhine and Richard Teichmann, so Alekhine, future world champion. These two actually played a match in 1921 when Teichmann was in his 50s, so kind of past his prime in principle. But the match was drawn with 2 wins apiece and 2 draws. Apparently Alekhine won some sort of playoff game, but I haven't got that one in the databases. But Alekhine played very riskily in this match, as was his wont, and I think that certainly cost him a black loss, where really, he played so stupidly and riskily in the opening. I think Teichmann couldn't do anything else except win. But this game was something different. Here Alekhine was white in the last game of the match. He was leading by 1 point, needed a draw to tie it off, and Teichmann just goes about and completely outplays him in beautiful fashion. So let's have a look at this game. What I'm also going to do, just before I start, I'm going to just look back at the highlights from the classic Lasker-Capablanca game, also in an Exchange Ruy Lopez, from St. Petersburg 1914, because I think once you've seen that, you'll understand a little bit more what Alekhine was doing in this game, and you'll also be able to compare why did this work for Lasker and why didn't it work for Alekhine. So let's have a look. The Exchange Ruy Lopez, that's e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, a6, takes. And now we'll have a look at Lasker against Capablanca. Lasker played the immediate d4, which is a little bit odd in a way. Normally you play a move like castle kingside or knight c3, as Alekhine played. Black defends the e5 pawn, and then afterwards you play d4. This in principle just loses a tempo. But the famous part about this game, the first famous part, was that in this position Lasker played the very risky positional move f5, with the aim simply of restricting the movement of the knight on e7 and bishop on c8 by putting this pawn chain on e4, f5. Now, a sub-idea of it was to play the move bishop f4, and black can either take off this bishop, which people feel he really should have done, or he can allow white to take on d6, which undoubles the black pawn. However, there's this backward pawn on d6, which is restricted by the pawn on e4. And the other slight problem is that the black squared bishop has gone to b7, and this has given white the e6 square for the knight. And then another interesting point here, Capablanca plays b5, and Lasker plays the move b4, restricting those 3 pawns, and giving away the c4 square, but the knight on c8 is tied to the defense of d6, so he's unlikely to be able to play knight b6 to c4 anyway, and even if he reaches c4, not 100% clear what he's doing from there. So just remember those themes. That was kind of the Lasker template for the Exchange Ruy Lopez. Obviously such a win in such dramatic circumstances against your major rival, that made a huge impression on the chess world at the time, and we're going to see Alekhine implementing a number of these themes. So Alekhine played knight c3, Teichmann played f6 to defend the e5 pawn, and now Alekhine went d4. So gaining himself a tempo, forcing black to play f6, which he might or might not want to play. And here Teichmann played bishop d6, which is pretty reasonable. The engines want to play bishop d7 in this position. Prepare to castle queenside and leave the positioning of the dark squared bishop till another day. I mean, all perfectly fine. The amazing thing was that what the engines recommend here, because both Dragon and Stockfish were recommending the move h4. Shouldn't be surprised about h4 when it's played by engines, but still, pretty interesting somehow. What on earth is White doing here? Well, I mean, the key point really is that, Stockfish and Dragon, they don't really think that White's going to achieve anything in the centre. So basically, they sort of feel that something's got to be done on the wings. We've got to start gaining space, and the best place to gain space is on the wings. And the simplest way to start something on the wing is to push a rook's pawn, and that can be either h4 or it can be a4. And well, it is quite interesting actually. I mean, for example, if black plays the move h5, very reasonable, just to try and prevent white from gaining space, then the engines were looking at playing this idea: castles and knight f4. You're attacking g6 and h5. You're going to play bishop e3 and f3 and king f2, just develop like that. You can also think about playing a4 to a5 just to try and restrict those queenside pawns. Maybe eventually go g4 and expand on the king side. Of course it's even. Of course it's pretty equal. You can just get something like this, for example. This is what the engines were showing, and then agreeing a draw. Of course it's even, but yeah, I mean, you can certainly think of plenty of ideas of playing with with both colours actually. So I thought this was a very interesting idea. Now, what Teichmann played was bishop d6. Obviously sort of thinking, well, if the knight moves away from d4, then maybe I can put my bishop to e6 rather than d7. And here Alekhine played something where, I recognised the theme from the Lasker game, but I was thinking, wow, is that really it? But to my surprise, Stockfish, Dragon, and Leela all want to do exactly the same thing, and it's this move knight de2. What is knight de2 aiming for? Simply, the idea is to play bishop f4 and swap off the dark squared bishops. If necessary, you're going to take the bishop on d6 and undouble the black pawns. What on earth is the idea behind that? Well, the idea behind it simply is that obviously by exchanging off the dark squared bishops, you are removing the dynamics from the position. You're flattening out the black position by removing one of his dynamic advantages, the bishop pair. Now, of course what you're doing, for example, let's have a look at a move like this. Of course what you're doing, you are removing his structural weakness. However, what does white have? In this position, well, white has a slight space advantage. He's got a pawn on e4 against a pawn on d6. And what do the engines think is a good plan now? Well, for example, they're going to try and grab space on the wings, a4 to a5, for example, or h4 to h5, and play moves like f3 and king f2. And if black plays something like f5, for example, at some stage we'll take on f5 and we'll have 3 pawns against 2 on the king side, possibilities to create a passed pawn there. I mean, it's again, the engines are agreeing lots of short draws in this position. It's not that this is winning for white, but it's quite a positive plan, quite a positive way of playing for something in these positions. And it's very interesting to compare, what the engines are finding here, where, you look at the position after move 15, 16, you say, oh, yeah, white's made progress, and I can sort of see some ideas and compare that to what Alekhine did, because Alekhine just didn't really find any sort of good plan. So Teichmann went knight e7, Alekhine went bishop f4, bishop e6, takes, and now, Alekhine played castle queenside, and well, the engines want something completely different, of course. a4, castles a5 is one idea, rook e8, f3 for example, f5, and then h4, both rook's pawns. Now this one's supposed to be coming up to h5 and h6, and after fe4, knight e4, bishop f5, knight g3, takes, you've got to be just sure that there's no big discovered attacks here. But knight d5, king f2, well, I mean, the position's actually got fairly unbalanced. White's got 3 kingside pawns against 2. The black 4 pawns are restricted by this pawn on a5. The position's clearly still equal, but there's quite a lot that could happen in it. Just very, very interesting stuff. I really like this. It makes you kind of keen to try it yourself. Another line that the Engines was playing was h4, which transposes into lines earlier. Well, Alekhine played the move castle queenside, castles and rook e1, and actually the Engine's already thinking that black's maybe just a little bit better now already, because this move rook e1, it's not actually clear what white is going to do from now on. I mean, Stockfish just wants black to play b5 straight away. Teichmann will get around to that, but first of all he plays a number of strengthening, consolidating moves, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with doing that. Plays bishop f7, gets the bishop out of the way. Knight coming to d4, which is a little bit odd. You don't really know what that knight is doing there. I mean, in general, the Engines were always looking for knight f4, which helps support some kingside advance, and also helps restrict d6 to d5, for example. But knight d4 played, rook e8. Again, b5 could be played immediately, but it doesn't really matter. King c7. Teichmann again keeping his pieces nice and compact, bringing the king up, protecting these pawns, and well, I mean, there are a lot of possibilities for black. You could look for c5 and d5, no problem. But after a4 from Alekhine, Teichmann got interested and played the move b5, and Stockfish likes black a little bit more, and I think it's pretty clear that Teichmann is he's playing for the win in this game. He's not taking it easy. And now, very interesting to see what Alekhine does here. He plays ab5, ab5, and b4, and I think you can clearly see Lasker's influence here, because he's trying to tie down these pawns and clamp down on them. The only thing is, of course, is that Teichmann's setup is way better than Capablanca's here. The king on c7 is defending the pawns on d6, c6, and b5. This bishop isn't on b7; it's on f7, which is a great diagonal, sort of cutting across the white position there. And now the other important thing is that the white king's on c1, which means that if a black knight gets on c4, actually the white king's in trouble. And Teichmann spots this straight away and plays the excellent move knight c8, and that knight's coming round b6 to c4. Now the Engines wanted to play knight g6 rather and come through e5 into c4, but both moves are excellent really. And now the interesting thing is that the Engines straight away hit the panic button and say, okay, let's get that king out of the way. It's coming back to f2, and after that, white's fine. There's the knight on c4 is fine, but it's sort of hitting thin air if the white king isn't there. But that would be, that would be rather rigorous approach. You'd really have to show as white your understanding that you understand that things have gone a little bit wrong for you in the opening. You've played a few suboptimal moves. Alekhine tried to do something a little bit more elegant, I suppose. He played knight f5. Teichmann played g6. Not strictly necessary. You could just play knight b6 immediately, because obviously knight g7, rook g8 is going to be quite good for black. You take the pawn on g2. But Teichmann played g6. Very sensible, solid move, and then played knight b6. And then once again here, the Engines are saying king d2, get the king out of the way, for God's sake. But Alekhine played king b2, and I think you can see here that he hasn't really understood the danger that he might be in here. He's thinking, Teichmann will go to the a file, we'll swap off rooks, it's just going to be a draw, I win the match, easy. But Teichmann actually in this game is very impressive. Just really understands the moment to strike, and does so with the move d5. Now this isn't exactly the very best move. The Engines want to play f5 first of all, and then play d5 after. But okay, d5 shows exactly the right spirit. It's striking like crazy. The first threat is to go d4 here, and the key point is that if ed, we go rook e3, and knight c4 check, simply picking up a piece. So quite dangerous. Now apparently the Engines think that white could get away with this, but it's very dangerous, right? I mean, you've got checks on c4 and a4. You've also got rook a8 coming into a2. I could imagine that Alekhine was not keen on trying to deal with this, because to be honest, it looks like you're getting mated. What he did was play the move rook d4. Just blocking d4 and hoping, to exchange some stuff somehow. But now Teichmann was back on exactly the right track, playing this move f5. And this is a really unpleasant move. You're threatening d takes c4, you're also threatening f4, driving the knight away from e3, and then bringing the knight into c4. I mean, the best that white's got is to go g3, but this is quite unpleasant somehow. Rook d8, fe, and then rook e8 was the idea. Just keeping the pin on the rook, and of course ef5 still allows knight e3, or even knight c4. So that would have been the best, but Alekhine was decided to try and mix things up and played the move rook a1, looking for some checks and some confusion. And here Teichmann played a really great move that the engines also unanimously want. He played the incredible move knight c8, and what does this do? Well, it stops rook a7, and it abandons the attack on a4 and c4, which is why it's so hard to see. But actually, this knight is coming round to d6, where it will attack c4, but will also attack the e4 pawn. And, once you go knight d6, if white goes rook a7, you just go king b6. The f7 bishop is defended, and the rook has to retreat. So it's an incredibly elegant and strong move. And, it really had an effect on Alekhine, because he really panicked in this position and played the move g4. So desperately trying to force black to do something. But, actually Teichmann doesn't mind anymore. He took on e4. Rook takes d8, and now Teichmann made a slight inaccuracy here. To be honest, I don't particularly blame him for it, because it's a really non-standard move, and you completely understand the reason. I mean, Teichmann wanted to take on d8, so after fe he could play the move f4, and felt that keeping the rook attacking the e4 pawn was more important than keeping the king on the second rank. However, the very best move was actually to take with the rook on d8, and after fe to go f4, knight g2 and rook d4, and it's actually very difficult to defend that pawn on b4. And after takes, you check, you go rook c4, you go b4, you take on here, and then you're going to come with c5 and king b6 and knight d6, and you just got a great position with black. This was just wins non-stop for all the engines. So after king d8, fe, f4. The engine suggested this defense: knight g2, g5, knight e1, knight b6. We go knight f3, attacking the pawn, h3, h6, and then this move, knight d1, and we're going to bring the knight round to f2. And this is a pretty nifty way of defending everything. You defend g4, h3, knight on f2 defends e4, and you're covering all the entry points as well. But still, it still feels quite horrible to me. The engines think that white can hold, but I don't know. I mean, certainly very hard to spot, and also not 100% convincing, I have to say. Alekhine didn't see this and didn't get anywhere close. He gave a check, a rather useless check, actually. Teichmann went to c7. e7 is apparently even stronger, according to the engine, probably because after g5 you can play a move like king f6, defend the pawns more easily. But king c7 is still minus 2.5, so not so bad. Rook f1, played by Alekhine, going to f5 here, trying to keep the knight active. But, you see this with Teichmann's endgame victories. He could just play very Capablanca-like, actually, very simply. And, he just keeps on making good moves. Knight d6, attacking the pawn on e4, attacking the threatening to come into the c4 square. If white takes on d6, it's just a gorgeous ending for black. So Alekhine keeps on trying to create some problems, but after check, king c1, king forces the back rank. Actually, rather strange or unusual move from Teichmann, king b7. Strange to give white, the hint of a d6 fork, really. King b6 feels more natural, but I think that Teichmann basically wanted to stop the rook from invading on a8 if his rook ever left the back rank, and he wasn't afraid of ghosts. Simply, he just didn't believe that white was ever going to have a fork there, and he's completely right as well. So knight d4 played, h5 now, breaking open the king's side. Obviously white's really crippled by having all the stuff on the first rank like this. So g takes h5, bishop h5, knight b3, looking to get some checks, but f3. And well, Alekhine didn't even bother giving a check on c5. He went back to d2, desperately trying to stop the pawn from advancing. But after e3, you know, it's just this is just impossible. Rook a3 played f2, knight a4. Yeah, hitting that one, looking for some knight c5 maybe. But Teichmann just took and played rook d8, and Alekhine resigned here. We're threatening rook d2 and, well, rook d3, takes, bishop e2. We've both got an f-pawn you can't stop me from queening, and also a passed a-pawn as well. Just total carnage. So there we are. You know, I hope you enjoyed that. I thought that was a really impressive game. You know, I mean, Alekhine 1921 was a serious World Championship contender. And yeah, on the black side of an Exchange Ruy Lopez, Teichmann just set him aside like he was nothing. You know, I thought the opening stuff from the engines was really interesting. This h4 playing with the rook's pawns, even in an opening like this. I thought that was really, really interesting. Also intrigued to see that Alekhine's plan, you know, was really the absolute 100%, you know, die-cast favourite of the engines there. Yeah, I mean, I thought that that Teichmann played really well. You know, very quiet, Capablanca-like strengthening moves. But then when stuff had to happen, you know, some lovely knight manoeuvres. This move, knight c8, round to b6, switching to dynamics at the right moment with d5. And then this lovely idea, knight c8, you know, far from obvious. I'd be very proud if I found that move. You know, abandoning the knight, which looks like a great outpost, just to transfer it to an even better one. Just optimizing the pieces, just like you know, the neural nets do so well. And yeah, and even this last little inaccuracy here. I mean, it was concrete from Teichmann. You know, I mean, he didn't just play the natural move and whatever. You know, he was really. He was working at this, and he was trying to find the the very best move. Didn't quite work out, but yeah, you know, it was really was still a very strong move, and yeah, he finished the game absolutely beautifully. So there we are. I hope you're enjoying this. I'm going to show a few more games of Teichmann. There's some magnificent games from I think it's Carlsbad 1911, which was a tournament that he won, a massive tournament that he won, probably his best result ever. He beat Rubinstein and Schlechter in super style. Those games are reasonably well known. There's also a few others that are not well known that are simply fantastic as well. I mean, he just was a really, really good player, and yeah, crying shame that he's you know, completely unknown nowadays. But there we are. You know, I hope you enjoyed that. If you like the video, give a like, subscribe to the channel, tell your friends, take a look at my new book, Reengineering the Chess Classics, available for a good price on Forward Chess. Well, already a good price normally, but with an extra $5 discount, because I'm the Forward Chess Author of the Month for well, August to September. So do take a look at that. I mean, if you like these sort of games and this sort of material, then there's just so much of that in Reengineering the Chess Classics, and yeah, I'm very proud of that book. You know, I really do think it's a really, really good one. So do take a look at that. But otherwise, you know, thanks very much for watching. Keep the comments coming, and hope to see you at the next videos. Thanks for watching.